Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And welcome back. We got a good one for you today. It's gonna be about winning. Everybody likes winning a game of EDH.
Hey!
We talk so much on this podcast about how we don't necessarily keep track of winning, but it's so secondary in terms of like priorities. It's a secondary priority. If I win, great. But there's so many times too that when I win, it's because of my opponents, where it's like, oh, like
right.
Two people killed each other. All right, I guess I won. Or there's just so many ways that in a 4-player game you can win. But we've been seeing a lot of discussion about looking back on the year, classic January type thing. Yeah. How many games you won this year, how many games you played, or what caught our eyes were like the percentages of win. So we figured we'd discuss that topic without getting too involved with how many games I won this year. Games of Commander I won is 0, but not letting it bother me because I think I only played 10, 12.
Right.
Actually, I might have won 1 at BrewCon, but cut that part out.
And I should mention, I did keep track of the number of wins I got. Mostly because I was keeping track of the games. And what started out as, I wanted to know when I was playing them, playing the decks that I was playing, and how they were winning and losing. So I would, at the end of the night, scribble a little note in a book, which basically said, the deck rocked, the deck sucked, we need to take this out, or I need to add something that does this in. And then at the end of the year, I thought, I can find out how many wins I got. So I did, and just sort of calculated out from there.
If there's one thing I know about Magic players, that they love math, which is a broad generalization, sure, or at least looking at statistics. Also still a broad generalization. I feel like I hear it as often that Magic players love math as much as they don't. So,
I think 75% of Magic players love math, and that's accurate to within, I believe, plus or minus 25%.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
I think it's 75% more. So 150% of math, of Magic players like math.
There we go.
I'm good at math, don't worry. I was a mathlete. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
In high school, I was part of a math team. A winning math team, might I add. We were pretty good. I think we were like 3rd in the state or something.
When I was in high school, numbers only went up to 1,000.
Well, that's Canada for you.
I've been around a while.
Oh, okay. Seems pretty accurate for the metric system, is to only go up to 1,000. That's what, a milli?
It's a kilo.
Centimeter? Millicentimeter? Millimeter? Or
well, that's a millimeter,
kilometer.
A thousandth.
Right. So it's like,
you want a kilo.
1 over 1,000. Kilo. Yeah. Thank you. Kilometer. That's the one.
Kilometer, kilogram, kilo, whatever.
But speaking of all these numbers,
yes.
I think the thing that we wanted to focus on today was winning percentage. Because if you've got a game of 4 people, on average, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. That's fine. Whatever. We've talked about, broadly speaking, other ways to play Commander or multiplayer Magic outside of 4-player. But we're going to talk about 4-player today. Because given
it's
a fair shot, given an equal power level, and like a good, say, discussion of how to play the game, you're going to be winning statistically 25% of your games.
Right.
And that seems like a not a lot. I mean, that's literally not a winning percentage. Granted, that's if you've come in first, right? Like, how many games have you come in first?
Right. And the difficulty is, like you said, that's not a great winning percentage, but it is. we are all conditioned to look at the stats and look at the numbers and say anything less than 50% is bad. And that's because we're used to seeing stats around games that involve two groups or two people, and it's always one-on-one. So if you're under 50%, you're not winning even half of the games. That sounds kind of crappy. But when you're in a 4-player game and you've got 4 distinct groups, 25% is the line. So if you're winning 25% of your games, arguably, you are bang on average. That's exactly the appropriate amount of games you should be expecting to win.
I would even add in, like, with even your concept of, you've got two groups, like,
yeah.
With the 25% thing, like, with 4 people, if you're 1 or 2, first place or second place, you're being 50% within the top half. So it's
right.
like, I'm not going to harp on this too much. Redefine what you would consider a winning percentage, but
right.
That's not what we're discussing here today.
No.
We're talking about coming in first. We're talking about your share, which, you could argue, being 25%. We're talking about casual Commander, real low stakes games. We're not talking about high powered. We're not talking about, like, the condition of your good night of Magic being, I won. Like, that's not your intent going into these games. Which I would say most people, like, this is going to be also another generalization. That feels like most people I talk to when it comes to Magic is like, they're not gunning for the win from turn 1. There's a point in the game, generally later on, where you want to win, but that's not going to be your first priority.
I would argue that just about every casual player wants to win whatever game they're playing.
Right.
I don't care how casual your Magic game is. You probably want to win it. The question is how much. And that's really the deciding factor. Because for the most part, we're playing low power or underpowered decks. So, I mean, if you want to win more bad enough, then you just build more powerful decks and find opponents who aren't playing powerful decks and beat them.
Right.
But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for great games, and you're looking to maximize what you're doing with what you have. So the question then becomes, I don't think any of us are looking to lose more than our fair share of game, but that has to happen at some point. If you're playing in a 4-player pod and you play 10 games, if anybody's over 25%, somebody else has to be below. It just has to be that way if you've got a winner for each game. So I guess it becomes more a case of, we're not looking at, how many wins can you get. It becomes more a case of how many wins can you get without turning off the rest of the pod.
Right. And I think too, like, what's important to note here is that we're not, like, talking like, oh, like, if you come up to the 9th or you start the 10th game, right? And, like, you notice that, well, I guess at that point it would be one person has 3 wins, 2 people would have 2 wins. But like say even a bigger number, 20, right? Like, you're on the 20th game, everybody has 5 wins except for one person who has 4 wins.
Right.
We're not saying let that person win. We're talking about theory here. We're talking about, like, what you should consider, where you stand, I guess.
What we're talking about is, if you notice, well, here, I can talk about one of my decks. Virtus and Gorm has a win percentage over 50%.
Oh my god.
That's too high.
How many games have you played?
With Virtus, see, that's just it. Only 6.
Okay.
So the number is low, and at least a couple of those wins I think at least one of those wins came in a 3-player game, where you're supposed to be winning a third of the time. So at some point, when the number gets high enough with one of your decks, you have to stop and say, is this deck fair? What is this deck doing that's making it so much more powerful than the other decks I'm playing? I mean, in my case, almost all of my games come in my Thursday night playgroup, with the exception of a handful from when we get different players in at BrewCon, or I'll go to JCon Philly or something along that line. I very much can set up my decks to have the kind of win rate that I'm looking for with my group, because I'm not interested in creating a group where everybody is just gunning for me all the time because my win rate is so high. That's not something I want, and for the most part, I don't think that's something anybody wants, because you get to that stage, and then you start looking at your opponents start thinking to themselves, well, the best way to get a better win rate or to knock that person down a notch is to build stronger decks, and now you're into an arms race that you want no part of.
No, and I mean, like it even as much as like creating an arms race, like it's gonna just create an environment where if, say, a new person comes, I've been in this situation, right? Like I was the new person once.
Yeah.
And night one, it was like, well, you know, even if you said it tongue in cheekly, it's like, oh, go after this person. This person, you know, does that thing. Like,
right.
I'm sure that didn't feel good for that person. But I also think that given the circumstances, that person also understood and like kind of played into it. So it's like that as well. But like, if you're winning, say, 60% of the games across all your decks,
right,
it's a time for discussion amongst your play group. And I would even argue that that's the case for numbers probably above 30%. Like if you're winning across all of your decks over 30%, like that's a lot.
Right. Well, and what is too much? Because I mean, like you said it at 30, and I found out what my win rate was. I was right around 28%.
Okay.
And my attitude was, you know what? If that gets up to 33 is when I'm concerned. I sort of looked at it and said, if I'm winning at a rate that's appropriate, if we were playing 1 out of 3 players, then that's probably too much. But anything below that, I thought, that's going to be okay. And that's completely arbitrary on my part. Right. I didn't base that on anything. And our group does not track wins. It's not as though there's a chart or a spreadsheet somewhere and we're marking down who's getting a win. We just don't keep track of it. And I would argue that most of the players in my play group, if they knew what my win percentage was, they'd probably be a little surprised, but not that much.
I mean, color me surprised. I mean, like, I know you to have won a game, you know, out of pocket maybe, where it was like, I feel like I've been around for a lot of games that are those types of games where it's like everyone but you kind of kills each other and then you're like, I guess I won. And I mean, everyone in the play group has that kind of scenario. Like that happens to all of us in that play group. But I think also, like, yeah, it obviously depends on commander and stuff, or like what deck you're playing. But I think also, like, I wonder how it looks on a bigger scheme. You know, you and I were talking about, I don't remember what it was, but this person was talking about their statistics, and it was like they had essentially a game a year. I mean, a game a day for the year.
Yeah.
And so it was like much bigger pool. Like while you had marked out for the year, 80 games?
Yeah, roughly 80 games for the year, which is what,
under
2 a week?
It's under 2 a
Barely,
week.
yeah,
like
it's well under 2 a week.
And that's if you played every week. And so it's difficult where a game does change those percentages dramatically.
Right.
Like if you were to lose a game, you know, it would come down from 33 to maybe 31. So with that too, like it's a matter of how you're winning. I mean, I don't mean to always bring it back to this, but like your table presence as a person really does matter.
It really does. And to what you were saying, I had a stretch through the summer. I don't believe I won a game in August. The entire month was just a wash. I lost every single game all the way through. And then sometime halfway through October into November, my win rate was, I think, just over 50%. It evened itself out over the long run. But it was just, that's sort of the way it went. And I appreciate that there are some games where it's like, oops, I won. And other games where you are a non-entity in the entire game, everybody leaves you alone, and you sneak one out at the end. And there's all sorts of different ways to get the wins, especially those wins where nobody really seems to pay attention that you actually got a win.
I think that's, I mean, I think that's also normal for the law of averages, or like normal for, standard deviation in general is like, that's going to happen. There's going to be,
and it's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah.
It just is. We're all going to suffer mana screw. We're all going to get mana flooded. It's just going to happen. Like I said, it's less about how and more about the volume of wins. And there's a certain amount, there's a range where nobody really notices. And then when you start tipping beyond that range, that volume becomes enough where you're just like, whoa. I mean, like you said, 30%. If I was winning 40% or 35% of the games, my group's going to notice.
Yeah. Especially where that means like what? Like most weeks, if you say you average 2 games a night,
right.
or 2 games a week, most weeks you're going to be winning about half of them.
Right.
And that's a lot rather than like once every 2 weeks,
It is, especially when it means that everybody else is always winning the rest.
Right.
But everybody else isn't there every week.
Right.
So if you've got different people there each week, it means most people are probably only winning 1 game in every 3 nights.
Right.
And yet somehow I'm winning almost every night.
And that's specific to us where we have, where you have a play group that has a set cast of people that, they rotate in and out depending on their weeks, depending on like their availability. But like, you compare it to say like an LGS where maybe you'll get 3 games in a night every week, but like you're dealing with like a larger pool of people. Mm-hmm. If you're winning more consistently, certain people will notice more regardless.
Right. But even in those situations, then, consider the deck choices that you're making. Maybe you are consistently choosing a deck that's just a little overpowered for the group that you're looking at. If you're at your LGS, you already know who are the really good players and who have the really good decks and what decks I need to watch out for. Once you've been going for a little while, most of the time you can say, okay, the power level at this store is here. There's a couple of guys who have a couple of decks that are more powerful. And I'm trying to play according to that. But if you're winning 30+%, maybe your deck choice is just a little too powerful for every single game you're getting yourself into. Or you're looking at it and maybe it's just an individual deck. Maybe one of your decks is just ridiculous off the scale and it's skewing your numbers. Pay attention to that deck. I hate to be the one who says, you need to power down your deck because it's obviously too strong. But where is the fun for all of your other opponents? If you happen to be in a group that loves to do a 3-on-1, and as soon as you flip your commander over and show everybody what you're playing, they're all like, oh, as long as they all enjoy that, I guess that's fine. But for the most part, people don't enjoy that. We're playing a 4-player game where we're hoping to be able to attack each other and go all over the place and do some politics and
be
all
given
kind of
choices
stuff.
Rather than be forced into a scenario. And I think too, without this episode kind of just sounding like, don't do this, don't win all the time. Like, you also have to consider the flip side of the coin, which is, do you consider second and third losing? Because, like, then your losing percentage is going to be much higher. But, like, if you're considering just first place as winning, you should balance it out by considering just fourth place as losing. Or at least if you're in a 3-player game, third place. But, like, with that, like, then you should be losing, quote-unquote, 25% of the time.
Yeah.
It's about, like, adjusting your expectations from a game. And these are obviously about larger numbers, larger sets of numbers than just, like, say, oh, I lost 25% of 10 games. Like, we're talking about over the year. Over the course, like, you're trying to temper your own expectations of, like, competitiveness. Because, like, if you're winning first place 15% of the time, then, like, it's going to feel bad. But, like, if you're looking at it over the course of 6 games, you won 1, then, that's 15%. But, like, if you're looking at it over the course of 100 games, then, 15% is going to feel much worse in that end. So it's like, like, extrapolate as you will, but, like, also think about the reverse side of the coin where it's like, I come in second and third a lot as me, and that feels really good as a player. You're going to want to come in second and third 50% of the time ish.
my goal for every single game is to be playing when the game ends. Because I want to play. That's really what I want to do. I want to play Magic. I am far less worried about the win and far more interested in the game state and playing the game and being involved. The last thing I want is to be the first person out who has to sit and wait for the game to finish. This is coming from a guy who plays most of his games in his own home, where I could literally get up and do something else.
Yeah, and I'll be honest.
I still want to be there.
That's kind of the point in the game where I try to speed things up. Whether it's speeding headfirst into a wall and losing, or speeding headfirst into a win, is like when that first person's out, we're nearing the end game, or at least should be.
Right. I think you're sort of hitting it on the head here, Andy. I'm not talking about the win percentage as being too high. I'm talking about the win percentage as being an indicator of how your games play. When you get a win rate that gets to be too high, it is likely that your opponents are having less fun. Yeah, and I'm not saying that they're going to have, I'm not saying that at 33% it's too high, but at 31% it's just right. I'm just saying, use that as an indicator. The whole point of Commander is that everybody is having fun. None of us should give a damn what our win percentage is.
Right.
It's just not relevant. What you should be caring about is, does your deck play the way, does your deck produce a fun game for you and the other players around you?
And I think even beyond just like the subjective nature of fun.
Yeah.
Like, and not to, I'm not like,
yeah,
not making fun of you for saying fun, but like what it is we're trying to say is that these are moving goalposts. They should always be in flux. It's never about, I should try to throw this game because I've been winning too much. It's about like analyzing how you are as a player. It's about you being, the best player you can be rather than being the best, player at the table. Like there's a difference between skill and, I don't know. I'm not even saying that people who gun for the wins are bad people. It's about like being aware of your surroundings, understanding the context with which to justify continue playing with you. Like if you notice people are upset about playing with you, it's probably because you're winning too much, or at least winning in like shitty ways.
Right. It certainly has, or it can be an issue. It's something you really do need to take into consideration. And again, like, this is not me telling you win less. This is not me telling you win more. This is not the win and your win percentage can be an indicator of issues in your games. I want my opponents to be having fun. I want to have fun. And sure, I'm going to have, I'll have some fun if I'm winning, but I want everybody to be there and enjoying themselves and having a good time. And when your win percentage starts to become oppressive, you need to be paying attention to that.
Yeah. I think that, it's along similar lines of how you and I discussed, say, counter spells or, board wipes. It's like, it's all contextual. It's all, dependent on if you have something to follow it up with, or, like if you're just doing it to like make sure somebody absolutely like just shut their game off. And like, it's this same context that tells me like, okay, your win percentage doesn't tell me how good of a player you are, but if it is too high, it tells me exactly what kind of player you are, and maybe that's not something I want to play with. So it's just being aware of these borders of how you're coming across at specifically a casual table.
Right.
So we're not telling you stop winning so much. We're telling you you're winning so much says a lot to your opponents.
Just take care. Pay attention to your opponents. Make sure that they're having a good time as well. It's an indicator.
Yeah. It was an exciting one. I can't wait to win another game. But that'll do it for us for this week. We're going to be back next week with a Temple's Treasures. So be excited for that one. Because we're Temple of the False Bud, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, if you are, press that subscribe button. We do this every week on Wednesdays. So play some Magic for me. Have a great night. May your 5th land be the temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!